During class, a boy named Kazuyuki was asked a simple question. What kind of girl does he like? Kazuyuki questioned why he was being asked, but his friend only replied that he liked large chests. He pondered a moment before answering that he liked girls with short haircuts. A classmate nearby with a hime cut overheard what he had said and seemed to be disinterested on the surface. The next day in class, everyone was abuzz with the sudden change from one of their classmates called Himeno. Himeno sat silently, ignoring the classroom chatter while everyone complimented her change of haircut and finding her adorable with short hair. Kazuyuki arrived late to class but seemed to quickly perk up and notice Himeno's change also. Without restraint, Kazuyuki commented that Himeno cut her hair but didn't mention his opinion of it. This caused Himeno to shudder and twitch with nerves as she wanted to know his thoughts on it. As she glanced at him, he blushed and mentioned that the hairstyle suited her very well. Placing her book down on the desk and averting her gaze, she thanked Kazuyuki for his compliment before falling silent once again. Blushing heavily after receiving a long-awaited compliment from her crush, she celebrated in secret. Kazuyuki, who was looking at her, didn't understand what she was doing, but didn't press the matter further. Himeno spent another class break listening to Kazuyuki and his friend talk as the friend tried to pry more information out of him about what kind of girl he likes. Kazuyuki comments that he likes girls who appreciate good food, as that means that she is a good person, he thinks. He adds that the girl would say innocent things while she eats like yum and it's so delicious. Those kinds of things are what he likes. Himeno, who was eavesdropping the entire time, knows what she must do at lunchtime. Once the lunch bell rang, Himeno took out her lunch and looked to see if Kazuyuki was there. When she saw him, she began to eat. She ate the first piece of food and meekly commented, "So tasty," while a blush began to form on her cheeks. She looked around as the blush grew to see if she was noticed. Seeing that Kazuyuki didn't hear her, Himeno began to eat more and after every bite, comment on her food in a positive way. After the third or fourth time, Kazuyuki overheard Himeno as she began to get a bit louder with her comments. Making a dramatically sweet expression, Himeno said how great her fried egg was. Her acting, however, was interrupted by Kazuyuki calling out her name, startling her and confusing Kazuyuki. Looking at Kazuyuki expectantly, with the blush almost consuming her face, Himeno was told that there was a rice grain stuck to her face, changing the reason for her red cheeks. As Himeno rapidly rubbed her face, Kazuyuki laughed and commented that she looks like such a foodie at the moment. Once again, Kazuyuki's friend questioned him about girls, specifically asking about what kind of girl can sway his heart. Kazuyuki groans while his friend comments on their taste of a strong bond and a heavy chest. That's his dream girl. Kazuyuki begins to answer, saying his might sound a bit pretentious, but he likes a girl with a cute smile. Himeno, listening in as always, made note of it and knows her next action to try and win Kazuyuki's affections. Everyone was chattering away the next day in class as they saw an odd sight. The stoic Himeno was chuckling away to herself in class. As they looked on, they found that she looked odd with the kind of laugh and expression she was showing, clearly not as genuine as she was trying to make it look. They all remark on how it was a bit unnerving, but won't say it directly to her face. All throughout the day, Himeno giggled and chuckled, with most being put off by it, and Kazuyuki seeming to have not noticed her attempts the entire time. When class ended, Himeno was disheartened by her lack of results, and when asked by Kazuyuki if something good happened today, Himeno answered no while faking a giggle again. Kazuyuki was summoned by his friend to leave, and he said his farewell to Himeno. Taken off guard, Himeno managed to show a genuine smile as her barrier was down, and it struck critical against Kazuyuki's heart. Kazuyuki was called again by his friends, and he left in a hurry while Himeno blushed over Kazuyuki's simple but kind words. As his heart raced while heading home, Kazuyuki thought to himself that he didn't know that Himeno could make such a soft and sweet expression, like the one that just captured his heart. Playing football for PE, Kazuyuki was watching Himeno as she gave it her all in the match, her long legs being a boon to herself and her team. Kazuyuki's friend commented that it was their turn to play baseball, attempting to get Kazuyuki's attention. Kazuyuki mentions to his friend that people who give it their all in PE are great, right? His friend, being blunt, asked if he was talking about Himeno, causing Kazuyuki to clam up and blush slightly. Kazuyuki, trying to hide his feelings, questioned why his friend brought up Himeno. His friend told him not to try and hide his feelings. He's been talking a lot about her recently, and it was very telling. As Kazuyuki went to argue the point, Himeno, who had slowed down to listen, slipped. Hearing a commotion, the boys looked over as someone asked if Himeno was okay. She had fallen and grazed her knee, but claimed that she was fine and not to worry. Kazuyuki, abandoning all subtlety, ran to Himeno's aid and told the teacher that he will take her to the nurse's office immediately. Kazuyuki asked if Himeno could walk, and she said that she could, but in actuality, she was just hobbling her way there, using the wall as a support. After watching silently for a while, Kazuyuki grabbed Himeno's wrist and apologized. Pulling her arm over his shoulder, Kazuyuki apologized again about this, but asked her to just hold on until they get to the nurse. As they slowly inched their way towards the nurse's office, the silence was broken by Himeno's heart racing, and a simple thanks from the quiet girl. One day, Himeno was confronted by a twin-tailed girl in her class called Ninomiya, who was asking if Himeno was even paying attention to her. The class commented and questioned the current situation, while Ninomiya continued to demand that Himeno acknowledge her presence. As Ninomiya called Himeno an eyesore, she added that her patience is being pushed to its limits, which Himeno finally responded that it really did seem like that. Kazuyuki saw that Ninomiya was about to let it all out and attempted to stop her, but it was too late. Ninomiya began to claim what the issue was between her and Himeno. The issue was that Himeno was so adorable that Ninomiya can't focus in class and actually spends all her time staring at her. Kazuyuki and the rest of the class were just left speechless by this surprise declaration, only able to watch on as she continued. Blushing, ranting and raving, Ninomiya questioned if she could make herself look like Himeno, but was unsure if they could put themselves through the process, ending with a frustrated groan. Blushing even harder and shutting her eyes, she let out a yell before confessing that she wants to be Himeno's friend. Himeno softly and gently said that she didn't mind being her friend, which Ninomiya said that she was honored and loved the gentle side of Himeno. Everyone realized that Ninomiya was just a fan of Himeno as they watched the pair awkwardly chat. At the end of class, Ninomiya sat there feeling embarrassed about earlier that day. She first questioned why she said all those things, and then questioned why she just blurted everything out like that. But her musings were interrupted by someone. She saw Himeno approaching her, shocking her to the core. Rubbing the drool away from her face, Ninomiya questioned why Himeno had approached her. Himeno began to speak, saying that about Ninomiya's earlier request to be friends, well, she would also like to be friends. Hearing such magical words, Ninomiya began to dematerialize from this plane of existence. She couldn't withstand the cuteness levels and passed away in her chair peacefully. After passing away, she and Himeno swapped contact information with quivering hands. During class one day, Himeno was completely consumed by staring at the back of Kazuyuki's neck. Kazuyuki, his sixth sense kicking in, felt the staring at the back of his neck but wasn't sure exactly who it was. Himeno continued to stare and stare, eventually focusing more and more on the nape of Kazuyuki's neck, its allure seeming to sparkle in Himeno's eyes. Kazuyuki, not really paying attention to the staring, started to turn to tell Himeno something. Holding the classwork while his face was only inches away from Himeno's face, who was looking right into his eyes, he froze in place, unsure as to what he should do. As their gaze was locked onto each other, they both began to blush and found themselves tongue-tied in that moment. Cutting to Kazuyuki's point of view, we see the cute and bashful Himeno in all her glory, face as red as can be. Breaking eye contact, Kazuyuki passed the class paper to Himeno without looking at her, while she did the same, as both their faces were as red as each other's. Himeno was sitting waiting for her bus, reading a novel as usual. That was, until a voice called out to ask to sit beside her. It was revealed to be Kazuyuki, who had locked eyes with Himeno. After keeping her stoic mask up, she hid her face in her book and agreed to it, but a small blush began to form on her cheeks. The pair sat silently beside each other, either due to their awkwardness or just enjoying the silence. Finally breaking the silence, Kazuyuki asked if Himeno was going home, which she confirmed before adding that she's actually heading to the library first before making her way home. Kazuyuki, attempting to keep the conversation going, asked if Himeno liked books, which she confirmed before letting the conversation return to silence. Kazuyuki then attempts to restart the conversation by beginning to ask for some book recommendations, but he stopped mid-sentence as Himeno moved closer to him. Himeno moved almost a hair's breadth away from Kazuyuki's face and held his head in her hands. As she started to back away, she revealed that Kazuyuki had a petal in his hair, but that's not what he was focusing on at that moment. After the moment they shared, Kazuyuki thanked Himeno awkwardly, causing her to snap out of her trance she was in and hide her blushing face once again. However, she wasn't the only one blushing. They both spent the rest of their time silently sitting there, but Himeno had kept that petal that was in Kazuyuki's hair. The next day in class, as everyone was chatting, Himeno did her usual habit of reading before class started. As the teacher began class, Himeno placed her bookmark on the page and looked at it. She had made it from the petal from the day before into a new bookmark, and upon seeing her creation connected to her crush, a blush formed on her cheeks as a satisfied smile formed on her face. At the end of the school day, Himeno was walking through the halls to head home. As she passed her classroom, she spotted someone asleep at their desk. Looking closer, she saw it was Kazuyuki, fast asleep in the light of the afternoon sun. Himeno, seeing him like this, made a decision. Himeno sat in the seat in front of Kazuyuki and attempted to contain her nerves, only letting a slight tremble out every now and then. Himeno watched Kazuyuki sleep, enjoying how cute and peaceful he looked, causing a blush to form on her face. While she sat there, Kazuyuki began to stir and mumble, attracting Himeno's attention. As she looked and listened, Kazuyuki muttered her name in his sleep, and that simple gesture captured Himeno's heart and caused it to race. With her heart ablaze, Himeno flailed around with energy from what she had heard. However, as she did so, her book fell from her lap, causing a noise that woke up Kazuyuki. Blinking his eyes awake and looking around, Kazuyuki saw that he was still in the classroom, and he was alone. Looking on the floor, Kazuyuki saw a book and immediately knew that it was Himeno's book. He softly questioned himself if Himeno was here, unaware that she was actually sneaking away, clutching her chest in an attempt to calm her heart. Realizing that he needs to return Himeno's book, Kazuyuki heads off to her home by bus. As he looked at Himeno's book on the bus, he didn't notice her walking home through the park nearby. As Himeno trudged through the park, she recalled what Kazuyuki said and blushed to the thought of it. However, her attention was drawn to a child crying over their balloon being stuck in a tree. Seeing how upset the kid was, she decided to help. Himeno climbed the tree and fetched the balloon for the kid, handing it off to them, which caused them to stop crying. Himeno, squatting in front of the kid, was covered in scratches and grazes. As Himeno watched the kid and parent leave, she breathed a sigh of relief, which caught Kazuyuki's attention, who called her name. Kazuyuki asked Himeno about her injury and what happened before he got there. After a brief explanation, Kazuyuki cleaned Himeno's injuries and placed a plaster on it, apologizing for not having more appropriate stuff. Kazuyuki then revealed something that Himeno didn't know. He saw her as a kid doing the same thing as she did today, surprising Himeno that he remembered it. It flashed back to Kazuyuki and Himeno as kids, just after Himeno had gotten a balloon for a boy. He also had put a plaster on her cheek then, and told her something that she never forgot. He mentioned that Himeno was a nice person, and he likes people who are nice. Hearing that, Himeno hid her face as she was blushing. Cutting back to the present, Himeno was in the same pose as the past, before she looked up and spoke, mentioning that she thought that he had completely forgotten all about that moment that they shared. The pair went and sat on the swings, reminiscing about how the park hadn't changed much since their childhood. Blushing, Himeno questioned why Kazuyuki was here since he lives in the other direction. As soon as she asked, he remembered Himeno's book and went to get it. Handing it over, Kazuyuki commented that she must have dropped the book in class and had come to return it to her. Himeno recalled the incident that caused her to flee and leave her book behind and blushed. Kazuyuki joked that it's rare for Himeno to be so forgetful, to which she only said a simple thanks. After a short silence, Himeno spoke again, thanking Kazuyuki for the plaster and the book. Kazuyuki, with the blush starting to form, told her that it was no problem. As the duo sat there peacefully, they began to smell something. They shut their eyes and sniffed the air, realizing that it was a curry house serving dinner to their customers. Suddenly, Kazuyuki's stomach started to growl, embarrassing him. Embarrassed, Kazuyuki tried to flee, claiming that he did the drop-off, so it's time for him to head home now. Himeno realized that she didn't want him to go and called out to him, thanking him again for what he did. Nervously, she began to say that she wants to do something for Kazuyuki. Himeno asks him if he wants to, he can come over to her house. Seeing her honest and cute expression, Kazuyuki is frozen on the spot and couldn't help but say yes. With the bell announcing their arrival, Himeno's sister greeted her but stopped halfway through her sentence as her and her dad spot Kazuyuki with Himeno, who greets them. Himeno's sister, who looked very similar to her, stared at the pair, as did Himeno's dad, who looked more akin to a Yakuza member. Kazuyuki sat at a table at Cafe Himeno, which Himeno's dad had named after her, until the clink of a glass caught his attention. Looking up, he saw Himeno in her uniform, with her charm turned on, as her other two charms were pressed against the serving tray. Himeno told him that he can order anything he wants, and it'll be on her. Upon seeing her, Kazuyuki could only say her name and nothing else. Working up the courage, Kazuyuki commented that the uniform really suited her well, surprising Himeno. She wasn't expecting the compliment, and blushed from the sweet words she heard. Himeno was overwhelmed by the compliment and attempted to hide behind the serving tray, but still squirmed and blushed all the same. Kazuyuki realized what he had said and stumbled over his words until he managed to order a curry. As Himeno's sister and dad watched on, her sister asked an important question to her dad. Is Kazuyuki Himeno's boyfriend? The mere mention of it caused the dad's glasses to shatter from the shock, since the thought hadn't crossed his mind until now. Sitting in Himeno's family cafe enjoying his tea, Kazuyuki thought about how he hasn't been here since he was a kid. Glancing around, Kazuyuki noticed a wall of books in the cafe, managing to spot the book that Himeno was reading in the past. As he looked around the place, Himeno cleaned the tables diligently. Taking a chance, Kazuyuki stared at Himeno while both of them were blushing slightly due to being in the other's presence. However, his view was soon blocked as Himeno's dad sat down at the table Kazuyuki was at and got up close, looking him right in the eyes. Kazuyuki was briefly startled, but Himeno's dad calmly asked him if he was the same Kazuyuki that used to visit when he was a kid. Kazuyuki was surprised and complimented the dad's memory, but he corrected Kazuyuki, saying that he actually doesn't remember him at all. Himeno's dad then admitted to Kazuyuki that Himeno has been talking a lot about him recently. Hearing that, Kazuyuki blushed and questioned what the dad meant. Kazuyuki questioned what Himeno's dad meant, with him explaining that Himeno has been bragging about her haircut and how Kazuyuki helped her to the nurse's office. As the dad finished by explaining that Himeno only talks about Kazuyuki, he didn't realize that Himeno was behind him, blushing with embarrassment. Himeno punished her dad by adorably beating him on the head, all the while Kazuyuki watched on silently. Himeno's sister then walked up and comforted their dad, before mentioning that they might bring their boyfriend to the cafe. Himeno's dad was horrified and shocked by the news, while Kazuyuki stood there, taking in all the new information. Subtly looking at Himeno, Kazuyuki thought about how she was talking about him so much, and the idea of it made him blush. Himeno offered up the curry that Kazuyuki had ordered, and he was stunned by how good it looked. He dug in while Himeno watched him eat it. Only after one bite, Kazuyuki proclaimed that the curry was delicious and continued to eat it. As he devoured it, Himeno watched on, fidgeting the whole time. As Kazuyuki was eating, Himeno tried to get his attention. Kazuyuki looked at Himeno quizzically, and Himeno tried to speak, but her words failed her, causing her to get redder and redder. With her nerves getting the better of her, Himeno ended up fleeing and hiding out back. While she tried to get herself together, she recalled the night before when she talked to Ninomiya about asking someone for their phone number. Ninomiya questioned Himeno's choice, especially for this kind of question, but once Himeno complimented her, she happily gave in. Ninomiya, being as cocky as could be, told her to just ask with confidence and she can't fail. In the present, Himeno reread the message and realized that she needed to be confident and ask Kazuyuki for his number. Himeno, steeling herself with resolve, told herself to be confident and just ask. As Kazuyuki went to leave, he complimented the curry once again and thanked Himeno. Himino, still being awkward, thanked Kazuyuki for visiting and giving her back her book. Kazuyuki began to leave, and Himino realized it was now or never and chased after him, calling out to him. Once she caught up to him, she stuttered and hesitated, but knew what she must ask. However, her anxiety got the better of her, and she could only tell Kazuyuki that she'll see him tomorrow. Kazuyuki, a bit surprised by the urgency for such a common comment, repeated it back to her before beginning to leave once again. Entering back into the cafe, Himino felt disappointed that she didn't manage to get Kazuyuki's number. Sitting by the door, Himino's dad asked her if Himino fixed the wound she had, seeming to mean more than just the simple scratch on her face. Himino, rubbing the plaster that Kazuyuki gave her, said that the wound within her had healed, seeming to surprise her dad, who didn't have much to add. After a moment of silence, her dad asked if Himino was in love with Kazuyuki. This time, it was Himino's turn to be lost for words. With her face lighting up with emotion, Himino added that she was indeed in love with Kazuyuki. Upon hearing the news, her dad's glasses shattered, and he began muttering to himself at her surprise. Being a loving dad, he told Himino that he would be rooting for her. Looking back at him, Himino called out to him, before informing him that he's not allowed to smoke in the cafe. Standing in the bus, Himino noticed Kazuyuki there, fast asleep in a seat. She thought to herself that he looked so cute asleep and enjoyed the view. During a stop, the seat next to Kazuyuki was vacated, and upon seeing it, Himino locked on to her new goal. Looking around, Himino noticed that no one wanted to sit in the empty space, and realized that she can take the spot beside Kazuyuki all for herself. Bracing herself, she readied to move and sit down beside the boy that she loved. After having moved herself down until she was in front of Kazuyuki, Himino hesitated, unsure if he had woken up yet or not. With her heart racing, she began to move into the seat beside Kazuyuki, her face red the whole time. But before she could sit down, a middle-aged lady spotted the seat and plopped herself down into it with a thud. Himino was rather frustrated by the development, but Kazuyuki woke up from all the movement and gave up his seat for an elderly passenger. Himino was sulking due to not being able to sit beside a sleeping Kazuyuki, but due to her being in her own world, she hadn't noticed that he had woken up and stood up, only realizing when he had called her name. She was stunned, and it showed in her voice. After bluffing that she's fine and not surprised, Himino was thrown off her feet as the bus quickly braked, sending her flying. Luckily for her, she flew straight into Kazuyuki's chest, who braced her to prevent her from falling further. With her face pressed against his chest, Himino was in heaven. Blushing heavily, Himino looked up at Kazuyuki as they shared an intimate moment, as if no one else existed on the bus that they were on. Finally speaking, Kazuyuki asked if she was okay, which she quickly said that she was and moved away from him to hide her face. What Kazuyuki didn't see was that Himino was a hot mess, and the situation they just had took her breath away, and she needed some time to recover. Himino and Kazuyuki stood in the cold yard, waiting their turn for the running practice. Kazuyuki was trying to warm his numb fingers, commenting on how cold the air was. Seeing him suffering, Himino decided to help him and took something out from under her jacket. Himino produced a heat packet and offered it to Kazuyuki. He tried to reject it, but she told him that she had two, so it's fine. Once he heard that, he reluctantly accepted the heat pack. Kazuyuki thanked Himino, which she told him it's nothing, but her face betrayed that she was clearly happy about helping him. While Kazuyuki cuddled and complimented how cozy the heat pack was, Himino was attempting to hide how proud she was about how everything turned out. But then Kazuyuki began to think about the heat pack. Kazuyuki questioned where Himino got the heat pack from, as his mind began to wander with the possibilities. Realizing that this was a dangerous line of thinking, he decided to drop the thought as it might result in issues. Himino noticed but was unsure as to why Kazuyuki was all red suddenly, not knowing that the cause of it was actually her.